But now to welcome you to this talk about the history and politics of the Americas BA degree. My name is Nick Witham, and I'm lecturer in United States history here at UCL, specifically in the Institute of the Americas, which is the department that hosts this brand new BA degree program. And I'm joined in my presentation today by Professor Jonathan Bell, the head of department at the Institute of the Americas and professor in United States history, and also Dr. Kate Saunders Hastings, who is lecturer in Latin American studies and an anthropologist, and also at the back of the room, Ruth Harper, who is the department's administrative manager. And so I'm going to be giving the talk now, but Kate and John and Ruth will be able to answer your questions as well as me at the end. So really what I'm going to do in the next 20 minutes or so is talk to you about what the history and politics of the Americas undergraduate degree is, talk to you briefly about the admissions process and what we look for in an ideal candidate for this degree. I'll then talk to you in a bit more detail about the teaching and the assessment that we undertake as part of the degree, before talking about the year abroad as an option, and then finishing by talking about the skills that we think that this degree embeds in students, and finally thinking about the careers that this type of degree in history and politics of the Americas leads to. So first of all, I just want to talk briefly about what history and politics of the Americas is. This degree, I think, does two really important things. The first is that it provides you with a very solid disciplinary grounding in the disciplines of history and politics. There are various modules throughout the degree program that allow you to develop this disciplinary expertise. In doing this, we also offer a wide range of study across the region of the Americas, gestured towards by this map from 1776, from Canada and the United States down through the Caribbean to the countries of Latin America. Now, this geographic range across three different regions of the world allows you to put this disciplinary specialism in history and politics into connection with this exciting and dynamic and globally important region. So the degree is very broad. It offers you the opportunity to study the histories, the political development of the societies and the cultures of these various societies in the Americas. But it also offers opportunities for specialization. Some of you will be thinking about this degree with a particular interest in the United States, or a particular interest in history, or a particular interest in politics, or a particular interest in Latin America. And whilst there are broad overarching modules that allow you to compare these various regions, there are also plenty of opportunities for both disciplinary specialization and regional specialization. So that's the degree in and of itself. I thought it was also worth us thinking a little bit about why you might want to take this degree here at UCL. Now, on one level, this is, we think, a relatively unique degree program to the extent that there aren't really any other degrees in the UK called History and Politics of the Americas. But there are also, I think, a range of other reasons why you might want to take this degree at UCL. I think the first of these is that the Institute of the Americas, the department in which we are all housed, and the department which houses 15 academic specialists in the study of the Americas from the perspectives of history, politics, international relations, sociology, and anthropology. It's the largest unit for the multidisciplinary study of the Americas in the UK. And what this means is that those academics who you will encounter on a day-by-day and week-by-week basis in the classroom are leaders in the field that they work in. We are all publishing journal articles and books in the fields in which we work. Those publications and that research expertise informs the teaching that we do from year one all the way through to year three. And that level of expertise, I think, is really, really important for us to take on board. Another really important factor is that the intimacy offered by the Institute of the Americas. As my colleague Kate said earlier today, London is an enormous city. UCL is an enormous institution. But the Institute of the Americas within this large city and this large institution is a very small and intimate space. As I've already said, there are 15 members of academic staff. There are 4 members of administrative staff. During the course of a 3-year degree, I'm sure that you'll get to know all of those people on a first name basis, and they will get to know your name over the period of that time. But also, we are anticipating that in our first recruitment for start in September 2018, there will be between 20 and 30 students on this degree program. So it's intimate in that sense as well. I think it's realistic to say that you'll get to know the names of all of the other students taking the degree program, and I'm sure that you'd be able to make some very valuable friendships and connections in that way. So intimacy and size, I think, is important. And finally, I think London's incredible location as a research city. There are lots of amazing things about London as a location, but we are here at UCL in the heart of an amazing research culture. We're surrounded by world-class research libraries. The British Library, most famously at St Pancras, but also the Senate House Library that serves the University of London, the Institute for Historical Research, more specific to history. The UCL Library in itself is world-leading as well. So I think it's fair to say that we can make a pretty bold claim for the fact that outside of the Americas as a region, London is probably the best place to be studying this topic in terms of access to research materials and disciplinary expertise. So I think there are a range of reasons for thinking about why you should study history and politics of the Americas here at UCL and at the Institute of the Americas. So I just want to talk briefly now about admissions. Our entry requirements, as it states there, are 3 A's at A level, 38 points at the International Baccalaureate, if any of you are taking that. We have no specific subjects that we ask for at A level. We want to welcome students in from a variety of different specializations at school and at A level. There is obviously going to be a route in for lots of you who've done history A-levels or politics A-levels or maybe even history and politics A-levels. But the important thing to bear in mind is that these are not requirements. They will not put you at the front. They will not necessarily put you at the front of the admissions queue, i.e. those who haven't taken those A-levels will not be disadvantaged. This is a degree that will teach you history and politics from the ground up without you necessarily having to have studied those subjects. It's also worth talking briefly about the personal statement and what we're looking for in an applicant. I think it's really important for me to say right from the outset that those of you who are applying for this degree will more than likely be applying for a range of other subjects as well. Right? You won't all be applying for 6 or 7 history and politics of the Americas degrees simply because there aren't that many to apply for. So we are not expecting your personal statement to be tailored in great detail towards UCL or towards the Institute of the Americas. It simply wouldn't be fair for us to expect that of you. So a relatively generic personal statement that is pitched at a range of different subjects is absolutely fine by us. One of the tips that we would give you, though, in terms of adding some value to that personal statement, is to try and think about what it is that means that you're particularly drawn to the study of the Americas. Have you taken some modules at school that relate to the history or politics of the United States or Latin America? Have you done some kind of work experience that means you're particularly interested in this region of the world? Have you simply just been on holiday somewhere in the Americas that makes you particularly interested in this region? These are the types of things that just in a sentence or two, it would be really, really useful for us to see in your personal statement to demonstrate that not only are you thinking about history and politics and perhaps other subjects, but that you're also particularly interested in the Americas. But as I say, it's vital for you to know that we don't require this to be tailor-made for us because that wouldn't be realistic to expect. But that's our admissions information. It's now worth just me talking you through the degree in a little bit more detail and the type of teaching that we do and the type of modules that we offer. Students will take between 4 and 6 modules each academic year, and they will cover history and politics in disciplinary terms. There is, as I said, the opportunity, in particular in Year 2 and Year 3, for specialization, but you will always take some modules that cover both disciplines, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a second. You'll have approximately 8 hours of contact time in the classroom each week, but there will be other opportunities for one-on-one engagement with your tutors in tutorials beyond that. There are the opportunities for language study in every single year of the degree course. And for those of you who are thinking about studying abroad, and in particular studying abroad in Latin America or the Caribbean, these language modules will be compulsory if you're going to study at a university where you'll be instructed in a foreign language to make sure that your language competence is up to scratch by the time you go abroad. And in terms of the way that we deliver our teaching, we try and make this as dynamic and as exciting as possible. We rely on the traditional lecture seminar setup to a significant extent. Lectures to larger groups of people of this size, perhaps quite significantly bigger, but then always connected to those lectures, smaller seminars of between 10 or 15 students, where you will be interacting one-on-one with a tutor, with the students that you're in that class with, discussing reading, discussing arguments, and really getting to grips with things. And so there's a mixture of learning there, but we're also interested in pursuing a variety of different teaching methods through workshops. These could take place at UCL. They could take place where it's relevant at various research libraries or cultural institutions around London, where there is relevance at galleries or museums or at the British Library for you to go there for specific weeks of your modules to find out about the resources that those places hold. And as I've also said, one-on-one tutorials. Each student will have a personal tutor throughout the course of their degree program. They'll see those personal tutors on a regular basis, but you'll also have plenty of access to one-on-one discussions with your module tutors to give feedback on essays, to give pointers about how to improve, tips about exam revision, various other bits of advice and support are given in one-on-one tutorials like that. And it's probably worth me just saying something about assessment as well. The degree is assessed by a range of methods. We have traditional exams. We have traditional essay submissions, but we also assess you via presentations, both as individuals and in groups, and through various other forms of slightly less traditional assessment that allow you to develop your skills and develop your experience in a range of different ways. And I'll come on to that a little later when I talk about the skills you develop in the degree. So just thinking about the type of modules that you'll be taking during the course of the degree. All of you should have a small flyer in front of you which gives full details of all the modules that we have as part of our program diet. There's no need to look at it in great detail now. I just wanted to gesture towards that because what I'm showing you on the PowerPoint is often a kind of summary and an indicative list, and the most detail is in that flyer. In the first year, you'll take 2 compulsory modules, one entitled Encountering the Americas, which is a broad introduction to the long history of the entire region, going back to European contact with indigenous societies in the 15th century, coming all the way through to the present. So covering a massive swathe of history, but also introducing you to key theoretical and conceptual issues, things like race, class, gender, slavery, imperialism, independence, globalization, key ideas that are going to be really, really important to you as you go through the degree program. You'll also take the module Introduction to Politics, which is a very solid introduction to the discipline of politics, comparative politics and international relations. Then you'll take 2 optional modules in the first year. If you want to study abroad in Latin America or the Caribbean, it will be compulsory for you to take a language module in Spanish, Portuguese, or French, whichever is most relevant to the part of the world that you want to, part of the Americas you want to study in. And then you would have one other option if you were doing the language, a module on the 20th century history of the United States, a module on the 20th century history of Latin America. If you chose not to take a language module, you would take both of those. So that's the first year. Then in the second and third years, we begin to see more and more choice for you as a student. As I said earlier, more and more choice for you to think about how you're going to specialize. In the second year, you'll take 2 compulsory modules, Research Methods for International Studies, which is beginning to build the foundations for your dissertation research, which is an independent project that you'll pursue in your final year. But also a module, Politics and Society in the Americas, thinking about contemporary issues relating to the political development of the Americas in comparative perspective. So thinking about the comparison, say, between the development of political parties in North America and Latin America, or the outcomes of elections in North America and Latin America. These types of issues will be the focus of that module. Then you'll have a range of options, and this is where, after this talk, going away and looking at the brochure that we've given you, we'll see a full range of these options. Lots of modules covering the history and politics of the Americas from different regions and from different disciplinary perspectives. Module on London and the United States, module on the history and politics of popular culture, democratization in Latin America, topics in the anthropology of Latin America, and then a language option as well. So there's quite a bit to choose from in the second year. And then in the third year, the choice is amped up again. We have students do 1 compulsory module, Contemporary Issues and Texts in the Americas, which focuses on really, really contemporary issues. What has developed in the history and politics of the Americas in the last 2 or 3 years as you've been studying this degree program. It might, for example, be that a particularly significant election has taken place during the course of your degree program that is worth talking about in broad perspective. This will be the type of thing that we'll do in this module. And one of the interesting and innovative things about this module is the fact that at the end of it, not only will you be assessed in the traditional way by exam and by essay, but you will also be asked to do a public-facing form of assessment, which will mean producing a blog or a video or a website or a display for a museum or a gallery that reflects in some specific way on what you've learned as part of the degree, but looks to communicate that with an audience outside of the university rather than inside of it. I think this is important to your employability skills and thinking about the use to which you can put your degree. After that, you will also do a dissertation, a 10,000-word independent research project, which will be attached to a module that we call a special subject. So you will do a year-long module in that topic, and you will also write a dissertation on a particular aspect of that interests you. And again, we have a range of these. There are 4 on the PowerPoint there, but there will be more to choose from during the course of the degree. One on Che Guevara, one on the history of sexuality in the United States, on crime, violence, and control in the Americas, money and politics in the Americas. My special subject is on the history of radicalism in the United States during the Cold War. Another module on the history of the civil rights movement in the United States. There are a range of different options there. And then beyond that, you also have further options to take, and again, the opportunity to take a language if you so wish. So that's the final year of teaching. I now just want to talk to you briefly about the opportunities provided by a year abroad, which is something that we would encourage everyone who's interested in this to think about. This degree program is available in 2 variants, a 3-year version where you spend all 3 of those years at UCL, and a 4-year version where you spend the 3rd year of the degree at a university in the Americas, at one of UCL's partners in Canada, the United States, Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Chile, or Argentina. If you were to pursue that year abroad, you would then return to UCL to complete your 4th and final year of study. This year abroad, and this is a UCL-wide policy, is not credit-bearing to the extent that it does not contribute to your overall degree classification. So it's an opportunity to go abroad and experiment with the modules that you want to take, broaden your horizons beyond what you've been able to study in history and politics of the Americas at UCL. But if you pass that year, you pass with year abroad on your transcript, which is an important thing, I think, when we're thinking about communicating to employers, the fact that you've been able to go abroad and succeed in a different culture, a different country, perhaps with a different language as well. So there are lots of intellectual bits of value to a year abroad, but I think it's also just worth thinking about the way that the tuition fees work and thinking about the financial value of this. If you're a UK or an EU student, you will only pay 15% of your fees to UCL and no fees to the host institution in the Americas. If you're an overseas student, you pay slightly more. You pay 50% of your fees to UCL, but again, no fees to the host institution. Now, of course, you have to cover your accommodation and your food and transport and all that type of thing when you're abroad. But in terms of tuition fees, this works out, I think, as very good value, especially if you end up at a US institution where the tuition fees are sky high compared to our British tuition fees. So that's the year abroad, and again, something that people may have some questions about at the end. Just finally, to wrap up, I just want to talk about the skills that this degree embeds and the careers that it leads into. I think there are 3 important ways of defining the skills that a degree such as History and Politics of the Americas embeds in the students who take it. The first is that there's really serious intellectual scope here, and I hope you've got a sense of that from me talking about the range of different modules and topics that you can study as part of the degree program. You're ranging across disciplines, you're ranging across geographic areas, and I think this speaks to the desire amongst employers in the modern world for students who can speak across borders, whether they're geographic borders or disciplinary borders, can speak to different people at different times and communicate effectively in a whole range of ways. So that intellectual scope is incredibly important. But there are also really core and valuable transferable skills that a degree like this embeds in you as a student. You'll come out of a degree like this as a terrific researcher, someone who's very confident going away on their own, showing initiative, researching a particular topic, and then being able to communicate the results of your research. Your skills of analysis and criticism are what you're working on a week-by-week basis. engaging with other people's arguments, criticizing them, understanding how they've been constructed, and then constructing your own arguments and developing your